Just a few years ago, a used MacBook Air was not really a particularly compelling purchase, but now, this is one of the best used MacBooks you can buy. So to start this video, let's talk about the history of the MacBook Air. Now, when the MacBook Air first launched in 2008, it was mainly a high-end luxury ultrabook. It wasn't meant to fill a particular product market apart from just being one of the first ultra-thin and light laptops that had ever existed. Now today we think of the MacBook Air as the budget MacBook, but that wasn't the case when it first came out. It cost $1,800 in 2008, which is a hefty sum. And for $1,800, you weren't getting a whole lot. It had these really slowed down Core 2 Duos that throttled to a single core when you tried to do anything demanding because the cooling system couldn't keep up. The displays used to get loose and break all the time, and by default, that $1,800 model had the exact same hard drive that you would find in an iPod, so it was unbelievably slow. And that's probably why Apple redesigned it rather quickly in 2010. Now this model looks a lot more familiar and it ran on Core 2 Duos, and then in 2011 it ran on Core i5s. But then in 2012 came the iconic update. It wasn't very major, they just made it a little bit thinner at the back and used MagSafe 2 instead of MagSafe 1, but this was the design that stuck. This design was in use from June of 2012 until October 2018. More than 6 years without changing a single aspect of the design. And that created a very strange situation when it came to used MacBook Air pricing. I'll be honest, when the 2018 MacBook Air came out, I thought that that was going to be a revolutionary step for the MacBook Air and it would just kind of modernize it and push a lot of people to upgrade. But there were really two main problems. One, it had the butterfly keyboard and it was basically just a dumbed down version of the Function Keys MacBook Pro that had become very popular, so it wasn't the best value. And two, it was way too expensive. This MacBook Air, for about the last 4 years, had had a starting price of $999. The Retina came out at $1,200, so it was more expensive, and they still sold the $999 2017 version of this MacBook Air even when that one came out. So it wasn't really a replacement, it was more of an addition, and it wasn't that good because it was kind of lacking compared to the MacBook Pro that was $100 more. So as a result of that somewhat problematic launch of the new generation, a lot of people kept buying or kept using these older MacBook Airs, and as such, their prices were very resistant to change. And that was a problem because, so this one that I have right here is a base model late 2013. It has the 1.4 GHz i5, 128 GB SSD, and 4 gigs of RAM. This is not a special computer, but in late 2018, this would have run you probably about $500. And the big problem with that was, as I pointed out at the time, why would you spend that much money on a MacBook Air when you could get a used MacBook Pro that had depreciated for about the same money and get a much better display, more high quality design, and just a better computer in general? So that's why for quite a while I've been just saying, don't bother with the MacBook Air, new or used. They weren't a particularly compelling value. However, things have changed slightly. And now that we have, first of all, the excellent 2020 Magic Keyboard MacBook Air that was a minor but very good and solid update, and we've now had about 2 years for these older things to sort of depreciate and get in line with the pricing you would expect, and I'm comfortable saying now that these MacBook Airs are a pretty good value, and more importantly, they fill an important gap in the used market. Let me explain. You may be wondering why this guy is here, a unibody MacBook Pro. Well, these things are unbelievably popular. Everyone loves a unibody MacBook Pro, and the 13s are some of the best budget MacBooks you can buy. One of the things that makes them so great is the versatility. If you go for a mid-2012, which is the most recent unibody, you'll still get full support in macOS, as well as the ability to do 16 gigabytes of RAM and dual SSDs running at full SATA 3 speeds. Those things are really great. Side note, should I make one of those? Should I max out a mid-2012 13-inch unibody? Let me know in the comments below. Leave a like if you think I should do it. Anyway, they're really great, they're really versatile. However, there are some inherent limitations to the unibody form factor MacBook Pros. Number one, the displays, 1280 by 800. They're definitely a little bit low res for 2020, and there's no denying that these things are a little chunky. And also, they're not terribly powerful. The most popular unibody 13-inch MacBook Pro is the mid-2012 with the 2.5 gigahertz i5. Tons of people have those. They sold them from 2012 through 2016. They score about 400 in Cinebench R20, whereas this base model U-Series 1.4 gigahertz i5 2013 MacBook Air scores 550, which is pretty noticeably better. So you are going to be held back by the inherent limitations and the age of these unibody MacBook Pros. But therein lies the rub, because if you want to go from a unibody MacBook Pro to a Retina MacBook Pro, there's a huge price gap. You can get a decently spec 2012 unibody for $250 to $350, but if you want to get a nice Retina MacBook Pro, it's hard to find those things for under like $450. And that is where the MacBook Air has come in clutch in recent years, because this thing has filled that price gap really rather well. To show you what I mean, let's go shopping. So to demonstrate what I'm on about here, I've created 3 separate eBay searches. Let's take a look at them. This first one is set to filter for 13-inch MacBook Pros from 2013 to 2015. So those are the most popular Retina ones out there. And straight away, you can see with a filter of buy it now and a price limit of $200 to $450, there aren't a ton of really solid options here. For example, this one right here. This one looks quite good, an early 2015, but I can guarantee you that whenever you find what looks like a good MacBook in this price range, there's gonna be something wrong with it. So looking through the pictures, this one has some pretty significant wear on the bottom. Oh God, yeah. It is very hard to find a good Retina for under $450. Here's one, a late 2013. I could see it being feasible to, if you do a little bit of hunting, you can probably get a late 2013 for around this price bracket. This one looks like it has some minor issues that you could probably correct with some cleaning, although this wear on the edges of the screen is probably delamination. A lot of the lower end MacBooks that you would be able to find in this sub $450 price point are going to have stuff like dents in the side, worn out batteries, maybe a line in the LCD, definitely some delamination. You're gonna have caveats like that. Now let's switch gears and look at a different eBay search. This one is set up to filter for 2011 and 2012 13-inch MacBook Pros. So these are gonna be unibodies, and what I've done is given it the same $200 to $450 price cap with a buy it now filter. Now you can see straight away we have a ton of results for this. This is kind of the sweet spot right now for the unibody MacBook Pro, and I'll be honest, a lot of these are overpriced. $399 for a pretty much bone stock mid-2012 refurbished. I would stay away from that. That's a waste of time. Here's one at $350 with upgraded RAM. That's not a terrible price. Some of these, honestly, I wouldn't pay in the $350 to $450 range for a unibody. I would try to go under that, but why don't we go ahead and filter our price even more? Let's knock $100 off here, $350. We should still have, look at that, 83 results. Here's a mid-2012, $337, $315, $260. This one, yeah, look, 8 gigs of RAM, Nice, looking good. This one might not have an SSD, but you can buy those for 20 bucks. That's a good price. So that gives you an idea of the price gap. You can very easily find these unibodies for under $300, but there's like $150 between a decent deal on a unibody and a decent deal on a Retina. So let's take a look at the final eBay search that I set up. Now this one is set up for 13-inch MacBook Airs from 2013 to 2017. And we are using the same price bracket of $200 to $450. Now, straight off the bat here, we have a 2013 Core i5 with a 128GB SSD for $300. Now, the main caveat that you're gonna find at this price bracket is a lot of these have 4GB of RAM. Now, personally, I can make do with 4GB of RAM sometimes, but I would personally prefer to have 8. So that's the one caveat with this lower end of MacBook Air pricing. Once you get up to $500 range, you should not buy anything with 4GB of RAM, but we're looking at $300, $350, so I could maybe forgive that. Here's one that's excellent, an early 2014 with the upgraded Core i7 and 8 gigs of RAM, and 450 bucks. That's a pretty solid price right there. You can even get stuff like this early 2015 for this price bracket. Now, I actually did that a couple of, like a month ago when I bought a MacBook at random, and it ended up being a 2015 8 gigs of RAM, 128GB SSD for $375. That's a fantastic price point. And you gotta keep in mind that with a 2015 like this one, even if it is a little bit on the pricier side at $440, you're gonna get a lot more years of official support than you would out of any unibody out there. Most of them are already dropped. The 2012 is probably gonna be heading out to pasture in like a couple of months. So this 2015, being 5 years old, is gonna give you at least 3 more years of official macOS support, which is a really compelling value. And as we keep scrolling here, you can see there are a ton of options. There's more 2015s, there's a 2014 with upgraded storage. You have a lot of options in this price bracket here. So as you can see, these older MacBook Airs can provide a ton of value at this price point. And I want to be very clear here that there are going to be some people that have been watching the channel for a while and are going to say, well, you've been criticizing the MacBook Air for years. And that's true, I have. But it's very important to note that those criticisms were coming from a different perspective. That was coming from a time when a brand new MacBook Air that looked exactly like this cost $1,000 with a 1440 by 900 display, bezels the size of Alabama, and just a very dated design. A time when for that same $1,000 you could be buying a 15-inch Retina MacBook Pro. That's not the case anymore. I can overlook that stuff when the competition for this is a unibody MacBook Pro, not a 15-inch Retina MacBook Pro. Besides just being newer and a little bit more powerful than a unibody MacBook Pro, you cannot deny that the thinness, the lightness, using flash storage, higher resolution display, these are all things that this MacBook Air has that are just clear advantages regardless of price point to a unibody MacBook Pro. Now granted, that's not to say that the unibody MacBook Pro is bad. I don't mean to trash on it. In fact, I love these things a lot. The fact that you can buy a 2012 for $250, slap in multiple terabytes of SSD and 16 gigabytes of RAM is something that you can't do with a MacBook Air. So the conclusion here is that both of these things have their use cases. As with most things Apple, there's not really a clear answer of like, oh, well, this is obviously the better option. There are cases where I think the unibody MacBook Pro is still a really great option. But for a lot of people, the MacBook Air checks all the boxes. Thin, light, decent display, fast SSDs. These are the things that a lot of people are looking for. And when you're looking in this price bracket, this is a fantastic value. So that's gonna do it for this video. I hope you guys found it helpful, informative. If you have any questions or you're searching for a budget-oriented MacBook, feel free to leave any questions or comments down below, or head to my subreddit, which is linked in the description, and we have a ton of people there that'll help you out. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Please consider following me on Twitter at LukeMiani, and with that, I'll see you all in the next video.